The father's justice. Jason Miller didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The sharp kick of his foot against the leg of my chair said everything he thought of me. The impact jolted through the wood, through my spine, through whatever was left of the quiet patience I had carried for 2 long years. Either fix the machine or pack your things and get out. He said it like a command, like I was hired help, like I had always been hired help. I looked down at my plate for a moment. Scrambled eggs, already going cold. A simple breakfast. The kind of meal a man sticks to when he's spent his life building something real, something lasting. My hands were steady, always steady. Decades of work will do that to you. Then I looked up at him, Jason Miller, 35 years old. Perfect hair, expensive silk robe, a man who had never built a single thing with his own hands, standing in front of me, trying to feel tall by pushing someone he believed was small. Busy, I said quietly. One word, calm, controlled. That was all it took. His face tightened, then twisted. He stepped closer, towering, trying to turn presence into power. "You live here for free," he snapped. "You eat what we pay for. The least you can do is make yourself useful." Free. The word almost made me smile. Before I could answer, I felt another presence behind him. Emily Hayes, my daughter. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes tired, but not surprised, not shocked, just distant. "Dad, why are you making this difficult?" she said. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Jason, stop." Just that. Difficult. For a second, something inside me paused. Not broken, not yet, just paused. I searched her face, looking for something familiar. The little girl who used to sit on my shoulders. The one who used to laugh in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. But she wasn't there. In her place stood a woman who had learned to look past me. Jason scoffed, emboldened by her silence. "Exactly," he muttered. "He thinks he's above doing basic work." I slowly set my fork down on the plate. The sound was soft, almost unnoticeable. But to me, it echoed louder than the kick of his foot, louder than his voice, louder than everything that had built up to this moment. 2 years. 2 years of watching. 2 years of waiting. 2 years of giving them every chance to show even the smallest amount of respect. And now, here it was, clear, undeniable. I pushed my chair back, slowly this time. No anger, no rush, just clarity. I stood up and met Jason's eyes, then Emily's. And in that quiet space between us, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was who they had chosen to become. And just like that, the line was crossed. I didn't argue after that. I didn't need to. Some truths don't belong in the moment. They belong in the silence that follows it. To Jason Miller, I was just the maintenance guy. The older man in the basement unit wore a worn flannel shirt and grease under his fingernails. The one who fixed things when they broke and stayed out of the way when they didn't. That was the version of me he understood. What he never questioned was how that version didn't quite add up. He never asked why my tools were always top grade. Not the kind you buy when you're scraping by, but the kind professionals invest in for decades. He never wondered how I could fix electrical panels, plumbing systems, structural issues, without ever needing to call for backup. He never noticed that I didn't just repair problems. I understood them before they happened. And Emily, she saw more than he did. She always had. But even she stopped asking questions somewhere along the way. It was easier, I suppose, to accept the surface than to look any deeper. I kept my life simple on purpose. Same breakfast every morning, same routine, same quiet presence in the background, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Because when you've spent years building something from the ground up, you learn that real control doesn't come from showing power. It comes from knowing when not to. There were moments, small ones, where the truth almost slipped through. A comment about property values, a correction about building codes that most people wouldn't know. A phone call I'd step outside to take, voice low, words precise. Jason never noticed. To him, I was invisible unless something needed fixing. And that was the point. Because people reveal themselves when they think no one is important. They show you exactly who they are, when they believe there are no consequences tied to their behavior. I had spent 2 years watching, not judging, not interfering, just observing, measuring character, weighing actions against intentions. And what I saw told me more than any explanation ever could. Jason Miller didn't see value unless it came with status. Emily Hayes didn't defend what she no longer recognized as worth defending. They thought they understood the man standing in front of them. They thought they had the full picture. But the truth was, they had only seen the smallest, most convenient version of Robert Hayes. And they had built their entire behavior around that illusion. 2 years earlier, the call came late at night. Emily's voice was shaking. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet in a way that told me everything had already fallen apart. Jason Miller's startup had collapsed. Investors pulled out. Debt stacked faster than they could understand it. $120,000. Student loans. Failed expenses. Credit lines stretched too thin. They didn't ask for help directly. They didn't need to. So I stepped in, quietly. I gave them the best apartment in the building. Top floor, 2 bedrooms, clean view, the kind of place people wait months to get into. I told them the owner was doing me a favor, a temporary arrangement, something to help them get back on their feet. What I didn't tell them was that I was the owner. Every month, $2,400 moved from one account to another, rent, handled before they even had to think about it. Jason's BMW lease, $600, paid on time, without a single missed cycle. Emily's credit cards, another $800, quietly cleared before the interest could catch up to them. No reminders, no conversations, no credit taken. Just stability, placed beneath their feet like a floor they never had to question. And for a while, I told myself that was enough, that this was what a father does. You build something strong, so your children never have to feel the cracks. But over time, I started to notice something. Jason never once asked how any of it worked. Not the rent, not the bills, not the way things always seemed to resolve themselves just before becoming a problem. He didn't wonder, because he didn't need to. As far as he was concerned, the world adjusted around him. That was normal. That was expected. He treated the apartment like something he had earned, not something he had been given. He spoke about future investments, new ventures, his comeback, while standing on a foundation he had never built. And Emily, she wasn't cruel, not in the way Jason was, but she accepted it, the comfort, the ease, the quiet removal of consequences. She never asked why things kept working out. She just adapted to it. Slowly. Naturally. Sometimes she would bring me leftovers. A small container, carefully wrapped. A gesture that looked like kindness, but felt like distance. Like I had become someone outside her real life. Someone separate from the world she was building with him. That was the hardest part. Not the money. Not the silence. But the realization that everything I was giving them was slowly teaching them the wrong lesson. That support would always be there. That someone else would always fix it. That effort was optional, and gratitude even more so. I watched it happen, month after month, decision after decision. And I kept paying. Not because they deserved it, but I needed to see how far it would go. It didn't happen all at once. Jason Miller didn't wake up one morning and decide to treat me like I was beneath him. It built over time. Small moments at first. Easy to ignore. Easy to excuse. A snapped finger instead of a request. A fix this instead of, can you help? A door was left open behind him, expecting someone else to close it. That someone was always me. He never asked how my day was, never wondered where I had come from, or what I had done before ending up in that basement unit. To him, I existed in a single function, the man who solved problems he didn't want to deal with. Ben, the sink's clogged. Ben, the breaker tripped again. Ben, why is the water pressure low? Not once, In 2 years, did he say thank you? And it wasn't just the words, it was the way he looked at me. Quick, dismissive, like eye contact itself was a courtesy I hadn't earned. Like I was part of the building, not a person living in it. There were nights he'd call down past midnight, irritation in his voice, demanding I come up immediately for something that could have waited until morning. If I didn't respond fast enough, he'd knock louder, harder, like urgency alone gave him authority. And every time, I went. Not because I had to, but because I was watching, learning, measuring exactly who he chose to be when he believed there were no consequences. Emily saw it. Of course she did. You can't live beside something like that and not notice. But she didn't stop it. She softened it. Explained it away in ways that sounded reasonable if you didn't look too closely. He's under pressure. He's trying to rebuild. He doesn't mean it like that. Each sentence, a quiet permission slip. I remember one evening in particular. Jason was pacing the living room, frustrated about a meeting that hadn't gone his way. He barely looked at me when I came upstairs to fix a loose outlet. "Make it quick," he muttered. "We've got things to handle." We. As if I wasn't standing right there, kneeling on the floor, fixing a problem in a space he didn't even pay for. I glanced at Emily. She met my eyes for a second, then looked away. That was the moment something shifted. Not dramatically, not visibly, just quietly. Because disrespect doesn't always come from what people say. Sometimes it comes from what they allow. Jason didn't think I deserved respect. And Emily stopped believing I needed it. Together, that was enough. I didn't raise my voice after that. There was nothing left to argue, nothing left to prove in that room. Some decisions don't come from anger. They come from clarity. I walked past Jason Miller without another word. He was still standing there, breathing hard, waiting for a reaction, waiting for a fight he could win. I didn't give him one. I simply stepped around him and headed for my room. Behind me, I could hear him muttering something under his breath, something about finally getting rid of dead weight. Dead weight. I let the words settle, not as an insult, but as confirmation. Emily didn't follow me. She didn't call my name. She stayed where she was, beside him. That told me everything I needed to know. Inside my room, the air felt different, quiet, still, like the space had been waiting for this moment, long before I admitted it was coming. I opened the closet and reached for the duffel bag I had packed days earlier, not out of fear, but out of preparation. When you've spent your life building things, you learn to recognize structural failure before everything collapses. I picked up my toolbox, the same one Jason thought defined me, the same one he believed was the sum of my worth. For a second, I looked at it. Then, it closed it, with a soft click. That chapter was over. I walked back through the apartment. Jason and Emily were already talking again, voices lower now, calmer, like the problem had already been solved, like I had already disappeared. Neither of them noticed me heading for the door. I stepped outside into the morning heat and closed it behind me, gently, no slam, no final statement, just a quiet exit. Then I pulled out my phone. Victor answered on the first ring. He always did. "It's time," I said. There was no need to explain. He understood the tone. "Terminate all support," I continued. "Effective immediately. Rent, vehicle, credit lines, everything. And start the next phase." A brief pause. Then, "Understood, Mr. Hayes." Mr. Hayes. Not Ben. Not maintenance. The name Jason Miller had never bothered to learn. I ended the call and stood there for a moment, looking up at the building. My building. 8 years of investment. 2 years of observation. Every detail, every decision, under my control. And now, that control was finally visible again. I wasn't walking away empty-handed. I was stepping back into position. The first thing I restored wasn't my identity, it was control. From my office downtown, everything was already in place. 6 months earlier, I had upgraded the building's security system. Quietly, legally, thoroughly. Hallways, entry points, maintenance access areas. Nothing invasive, just enough to see patterns, just enough to understand behavior when people thought no one was important, was watching. Jason Miller never noticed the cameras. He barely noticed anything that didn't serve him directly. By the second day after I left, the pressure started building. Payments stopped processing. His BMW lease flagged overdue. Credit cards declined. Calls from banks began stacking up. Confusion first, then irritation, then panic. I watched it all unfold on the screens in front of me. He paced the apartment like a man trying to outrun something he couldn't see. Phone to his ear, voice rising, demanding answers no one could give him. Because the system he relied on, the one he thought was automatic, had never been his to begin with. That's when I set the hook. Victor handled the details. A single document, placed back in my old basement unit. A property deed, clean, convincing, valuable on the surface. A vacant lot in Tempe is listed at $400,000. Real enough to believe, fake enough to expose intent. I didn't need to force Jason into anything. I just needed to give him an opportunity and wait. On the fourth night, he took it. The camera feed showed him moving through the hallway just after midnight. Hoodie pulled low, shoulders tense. He glanced around once, twice, then forced the basement door open with a crowbar. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Inside, he moved quickly. Drawers, cabinets, toolboxes, searching. Not for answers, but for value. That told me everything. When he found the document, his posture changed instantly. Slower movements, careful hands. He read it twice, then took out his phone and snapped photos. There it was. Not desperation. Opportunity. He didn't question why it was there, didn't consider that it might not belong to him, didn't even think to call me. He saw something valuable and decided to take it. Over the next 2 days, the pattern continued. More calls, different tone now, quieter, calculated. I had Victor run a background check on the number he contacted most frequently. A disbarred attorney, known for producing whatever paperwork clients were willing to pay for. Forgery. By the time Jason arranged to meet me, he believed he had control again, that he had found a way out, a solution he could leverage. But the truth was, he had already crossed every line I needed him to cross. Breaking and entering. Theft. Intent to commit fraud. The trap wasn't about catching him in a moment. It was about letting him reveal exactly who he was, step by step, choice by choice, until there was nothing left to question. And now, there wasn't. The ballroom was already full when I arrived. Low conversations, polished shoes on marble, the quiet hum of people who understood value because they had built it themselves. 400 seats, every one of them filled with developers, investors, operators, people who knew my work, even if they didn't know the version of me Jason Miller had been speaking to for the past 2 years. I took my seat near the front, table 3, close enough to the stage to see every expression, far enough from the entrance to watch who came in late. Jason arrived 15 minutes early. He looked out of place the moment he stepped inside. His suit didn't quite fit. His posture was too tight. His eyes moved too quickly. He scanned the room like he was trying to measure it, understand it, own it. Without realizing, he was already out of his depth. When he spotted me, relief crossed his face. "Ben," he said, forcing a smile as he pulled out the chair beside me without asking. "Didn't know you had access to places like this." "Company event," I replied calmly. He nodded, already distracted, already focused on the envelope in his hand, the one he believed would solve everything, the one he thought gave him leverage. For the first hour, he barely paid attention to the stage. Awards were handed out, names announced, applause rising and falling in waves. None of it mattered to him. His leg bounced under the table. His fingers tapped against the envelope. Waiting. Then the room shifted. The lights dimmed slightly. The tone changed. The kind of subtle silence that only happens when something important is about to be said. The host stepped forward, voice steady. "Our final award tonight recognizes a man who has spent over 3 decades building not just properties, but communities. Jason stopped moving. Through his company, he has developed hundreds of residential units across Phoenix, creating jobs, stability, and long-term value. I stood up. Please welcome the founder of Hayes Development Group, Robert Hayes. The applause hit like a wave. Not polite, not casual. Respect. 400 people rising to their feet, not because they were told to, but because they knew exactly who I was. Behind me, I heard it. Jason's breath, sharp, uneven. The sound of realization hitting faster than he could process it. I walked to the stage without looking back. No rush, no hesitation. Just the same steady pace I had kept my entire life. The spotlight was warm. The room went quiet. I took the award, turned to the microphone, and let the silence settle just long enough. Thank you, I said. I've spent my life believing that what you build eventually reveals who you are. A pause. 2 years ago, I decided to test that idea. The room leaned in. I moved into one of my own buildings without revealing my identity. I wanted to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching. A ripple of curiosity moved through the audience. I let it grow, then I spoke again. The man sitting at my table tonight spent those 2 years treating me like I was beneath him. Silence. He gave orders, he showed no respect, and a few days ago, he kicked my chair and told me to leave my own property. Gasps, heads turning, eyes locking onto Jason Miller. He froze. Completely. The same man broke into my unit, stole documents, and attempted to sell property that does not belong to him, using forged paperwork. Jason stood up suddenly, chair scraping against the floor, panic breaking through whatever control he thought he had left. That's not. Security was already moving. 2 men reached him before he made it halfway to the exit. Firm, professional, no noise, just pressure. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Authorities have been notified, I continued, and I believe they'll be very interested in what he's been doing. The room stayed silent, but the energy had changed. Not shocked anymore. Judgment. Jason struggled once, then stopped. The moment had already passed him. Whatever version of control he thought he had was gone. He was escorted out in full view of everyone in that room. I let the doors close behind him before finishing. Character, I said calmly, isn't built in public. It's revealed in private, when you believe there are no consequences. I set the award down slightly, steady, deliberate. And sometimes, the most valuable thing you can build is the truth. What happened after that night wasn't dramatic. It was precise. Jason Miller's world didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled piece by piece, exactly the way it had been built. The charges moved forward quickly, breaking and entering. Fraud, forgery. Not speculation, not accusations, evidence. Clear, documented, undeniable. He avoided prison, barely. 18 months of probation, a restitution order that drained what little credibility he had left, and a record that followed him into every room he tried to enter afterward. Investors stopped returning his calls. Meetings were quietly canceled. The same confidence he used to walk into rooms with disappeared the moment people recognized his name. Reputation, once lost, doesn't negotiate. Within weeks, he was gone. Back to California, back to his parents' house, back to a version of life he had spent years trying to outgrow without ever earning his way out of it. Emily Hayes faced something different. No charges, no courtroom, just consequences. The apartment was no longer hers. The arrangement that had quietly supported her life for 2 years was gone. No more safety net. No more invisible structure holding things together behind the scenes. She had to move out. For the first time in years, she had to make decisions based on what she could actually afford, not what had always been covered for her. A small studio across town. A receptionist job at a dental office. Long hours, modest pay, no shortcuts. It wasn't comfortable, but it was real. And for the first time, she felt it. The weight of responsibility, the cost of independence, the difference between being supported and standing on your own. There were no dramatic confrontations between us, no angry calls, no desperate requests for help, just silence. The kind of silence that forces you to think, to replay moments, to see them clearly without distraction. Jason lost everything he thought defined him. Emily lost everything she thought she could rely on. And for both of them, the lesson wasn't delivered in words. It was delivered in reality. For a long time, there was nothing. No calls, no messages, no explanations, trying to rewrite what had already happened. Just silence, steady, uninterrupted, the kind that forces a person to sit with their choices instead of escaping them. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Not an email, not a text sent in a moment of emotion. Something slower, more deliberate. The envelope was simple, my name written in a way I recognized immediately. Emily Hayes. I opened it at my desk, quietly. Dad, I've been working for a few months now. I saved enough for a deposit on a better place. It's not much, but it's mine. I wanted you to know I'm trying to do this the right way. There were no excuses in the letter, no mention of Jason Miller, no attempt to justify the past or soften it. Just ownership. I didn't understand before what you were doing for us. I thought things just worked out. I thought that was normal. It wasn't, and I see that now. I read that line twice. Not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. She didn't ask for help. Not once. No request for money. No hint that she expected things to go back to the way they were. Just a simple question at the end. Can we have coffee sometime? That was it. No pressure, no expectation, just an offer. Placed carefully, respectfully. We met a few days later, a small cafe near her work. Nothing polished, nothing impressive, just quiet. She looked different, not dramatically, but enough. Tired, maybe, but steadier. There was something in the way she carried herself now, something earned. We talked about her job, her schedule, night classes she had started taking, plans, real ones this time, built around effort, not assumption. She didn't avoid what happened, but she didn't hide behind it either. I should have said something that day, she told me softly. I knew it wasn't right. I nodded. That was enough. Because change doesn't show up in apologies. It shows up in what comes after them. And for the first time in a long while, Emily Hayes wasn't asking to be taken care of. She was learning how to stand on her own. In the end, none of this was really about money. Not the apartment, not the car, not the quiet stream of payments that kept everything running without question. Money was just the surface, the easiest thing to see, and the easiest thing to misunderstand. What this was really about was value, because money can build comfort, but it cannot build character. It can remove pressure, but it cannot create responsibility. And it can give someone everything they think they need, while quietly taking away the one thing that actually matters. Respect. Jason Miller had access to resources he didn't earn, and it convinced him he was entitled to more. Not grateful, not careful, just certain that everything around him existed to serve him. Emily Hayes didn't become cruel, but she became comfortable. And comfort, when it's unearned, has a way of blurring lines. It makes you accept things you would have once questioned, ignore things you would have once defended. And I learned something, too. That protecting someone from consequences doesn't always protect them at all. Sometimes it delays the lesson until it becomes unavoidable, until it has to be learned the hard way. Because real strength doesn't come from being supported forever. It comes from standing on your own when there's nothing left to lean on. Respect isn't inherited. It isn't given automatically because of a title or a relationship or a history. It's built, quietly, consistently, one decision at a time, especially when no one is watching. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is to step back and let them face the weight of their own choices. Not out of anger, but out of truth. Because in the end, money can change how people live. but it never changes who they are. So here's the question. If you were in that room, in that moment, watching everything unfold, would you have spoken up sooner? Or waited, like Emily did, until it was already too late?